Good evening. Oh, I am so sorry for my tardiness. We were trying to get on with our guest, but for some reason, the guest is having a problem trying to connect with our device, and we could not get him on this evening. But I tell you, we had a wonderful program lined up for you this evening. But I'm not going to give no credit to the other person, because I know that God is able. God is able. And so I just want to thank those of you who have tuned in this afternoon. This is the first Thursday. Can you believe it? We are already in the month of September. We are in the month of September, and the year has gone by. Oh, I was just looking over how many broadcasts we have done since the Bible Patrolman started this Testimony Thursday. But God has been good to us. And as you could see, the topic that we were talking about this evening, I am not sick. That was a topic that I want to get to this evening, because this topic is very interesting. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it. But the topic, I think we're going to have to bring it back and try to see if we can get our guests to come back on next month. Or we may throw in something in the middle of the month. You never know. But the topic that we were wanted to talk about this evening, I am not sick. You're probably wondering what are we going to talk about. But as again I said, I'm not going to spill it. Our guest had a technical difficulty, and he could not. We were trying for at least 20 minutes, trying to get him to get on, and his device would not sync with our device. And so I thank you all, and I'm asking that you all will continue to pray for the Bible Patrolman as he go out and do God's work, because this is what God has called us to do. The text that we use week after week is Revelation chapter 12 and verse 11. He says that they overcame him. Who is him? The enemy. We overcame the enemy by the blood of the lamb and by the word of what is testimony. And so because of the word of your testimony, that's how you help to, because the devil does not like when you testify. Whatever, I want to encourage somebody now, whatever you are going through, God will see you through, because he knows that if he allow you to go through it and you come out on the other side, guess what? You are going to testify. But even that, you don't have to wait until you get on the other side. I want to say to somebody, oh, praise God, praise God. I tell you, when you start testifying and telling God, you know what God will do. And look at it. The technology is working. The technology is working. And here we have our guests is here. And so we're going to be able to bring on our guest this evening and talk about it. So our guest this afternoon, that we're having here. It's a little bit a different twist from what you may be regular dealing with on this channel. But I was impressed to ask Dr. Kitson Francis to come on the broadcast this evening, and so I'm gonna bring him right on this afternoon, and I'm gonna ask Dr. Francis to come and join me here in the studio this afternoon. To God be praised. I'm just shouting. I'm just giving God all the glory this afternoon for technology. We prayed, and God showed up because he knows that we are going to give him the honor and all the glory. So we thank Dr. Francis for joining us. He's trying to get his camera situated, and so we are going to ask him to join us in the studio. Without further ado, Dr. Francis, I want to welcome you this afternoon. And so we ask that God will continue. Good afternoon, Dr. Francis.
Good afternoon. Good to see you. Can you hear me?
All right, all right.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
we can hear you.
What I had to do was I had to use my iPad because my laptop is not cooperating. So the Lord
Oh,
said, "Hey,
okay.
go on over there," and so God answered your prayer, man. We're good.
Praise God, praise God, praise God. All right. Dr. Francis, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We have gone at least a few minutes into our broadcast already, and so I'm going to jump right in. As you can see, the topic that we are talking about this evening is I am not sick. I am not sick. You may be baffled and saying why are we talking about this evening, but I want you to give the listening audience a little background about yourself, and that probably give away the topic, but give the audience a little background about who Dr. Francis is, and so that they can understand.
All right. Listen, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on here. I'm always willing to share what the Lord has given to me, and I will not keep silent. This is what he has called me to do. My background, real quickly, is in health and human services. I've been a therapist or doing family working with families now for over 40 years. I started working with kids on the streets, and then you know it's been quite a journey for me. I've worked in the area of substance abuse. Also, I spent about 20 years doing substance abuse, provided substance abuse therapy for the city, and also city of Huntsville, that is, and also for the people who would just call in. Over the last 25 years, I started my own business. It's called Family Counseling Service right here in Huntsville. And I work specifically with individuals, couples, and families. And it's all about marriage and family. That's what I like to specialize in. And so my business, the Lord has blessed me now, like I said, for 25 years, and I'm still going strong. I still work. I enjoy my work. Just to, so that's where I am. I have I've had some schooling in social work, sociology, health and human services, and psychology. Health and human services. I have a I hate to say this, but I'm gonna say it. I have a PhD in health and human services, and I have a PhD in psychology. So I'm kind of I think I know a couple of things. So we'll see what we get with that tonight. Okay.
Okay. Wow, wow. You know that we were talking to someone who is knowledgeable this evening, and Dr. Francis, I want to go right into what we're talking about this evening. We're talking about I am not sick. You know, I grew up the first 19 years, or well, 18 years of my life. I spent on the island of Jamaica. I spent on the island of Jamaica the first 18 years of my life. And one of the things that I noticed, sometimes the people would go to the hospital. And when they go to the hospital would put them on a certain floor. The hospital would put them on a certain floor. And when they put them on this floor, when the people or the individuals are checked out of that hospital, they would not let you know what floor that particular floor that they were on, because if you find out what floor they were on, then you would diagnose that individual as a probably a lunatic, or a crazy person, based on the floor that they were placed on. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
following me.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I'm following you. Very good.
yes, and so people nowadays, they when they get on that floor, or they are diagnosed to go on that floor, they are automatically says, "I'm not sick," and so I want, I want you to help us to deal with it. And if you can see that we're talking about the mental health, people do
Right.
not want to recognize that they are sick. And so, can you address that? Is mental illness, is that a sickness?
Well, there is a difference between mental illness and mental health. We all
Okay.
have we all have mental health. If you're alive, you have some degree of mental health. And mental health, like mental illness, is on a continuum. On one end, you have mental health, optimal mental health. On the other end, you have that's when you go into the mental illness component. Okay. And so a lot of people tend to shy away from talking about when they hear mental health, they think, well, something is wrong with you. Well, we all have mental health. Now, let me go back to the scenario you just gave about the hospital there in Jamaica, and there is this thing we call a stigma, you know, and what happens here is that when you go on a particular floor, you are labeled, okay, and the stigma will follow you. So therefore, then when people go in and they come out, they don't want to tell you what floor they were on, because I'm going to use this very loosely. If it's the crazy floor, they don't want to tell you why, because then they're going to because then the expectation is that people in the community will start treating you like you're crazy when there's nothing necessarily wrong with you. There are all kinds of
Mm,
misdiagnoses. People can be misdiagnosed, okay? And when they are misdiagnosed and they are labeled, the labeling is very important. So let me tell you something about labels. So I'm going to tell you about how powerful labels are. Um, Labels, just imagine, me. I go, my wife said to me, listen, go to the grocery store and pick up a can of red beans. We're going to have haystacks. We're going to have red beans. All right, I'll put some red beans in the haystack. So I said, okay, fine. I'm in a hurry. So, I go to the store and I say to one of the attendants, I said, sir, can you tell me which aisle I can find the beans? He said, yeah, aisle 15. I start taking off now. He said, matter of fact, why don't I walk down there with you? So he takes me down to aisle 15, and man, I had red beans, blue beans, green beans, uh, all kind of beans down there. String beans, you name it, they got beans down there. And he said, "Oh, by the way," so he goes, "I say, oh, here we go. Here's the red beans that you want." So I said, "Okay, fine." I said, "Well, the picture looks good. Got a picture of red beans on there, right?" So I'm saying to myself, how does this man know that that there's red beans in this can? So I'm crazy now. So I pick out my can opener and I start opening. He said, sir. I said, yes, sir. I said, what you doing? I said, I need to check to see if there are really red beans in this can. He said, sir, I've been working here for over 20 years and we've never had a problem with the label. The label says red beans, it's red bean. I said, yeah, but I don't know that. So I opened it up, and fast forward, I opened up 3-4 cans. He said, you know you're going to pay for it. I said, yeah. Now, why did I tell you that story? Going back to the story you told about the certain floor in the hospital and how people are labeled and the stigma that goes along with it. You see, what happens here is this. When you and I go to the store, we don't look inside of the container to see if what is inside the container is what is represented on the outside of the container. Why? Because we believe the label. Labels are so powerful that we get stuck on labels and we treat people the way the labels say. And when we do that, we don't look at the person anymore. We look at the label, which now represents the person. You understand what I'm saying here? And so we've got to be very careful. And that's what I took away from. That's what I took away from you saying, listen, on this floor, the label says you are like this. And so people treat you like the label and forget about the person that they have the label on. And we got to be very, very careful, because when we do that, we damage people. And some people who do not have the internal tenacity to say, but I am not this. This is how they label me, but I am not. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes the diagnosis is not right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the power of labels. And we should be very, very careful how we label people or what we say about them, because it can be very damaging, and very often it is damaging. So we say, I want red beans. I look at the picture, and guess what? They got red beans on the inside, but I never looked at that first. I looked at the picture.
Wow. And let me follow up with that. So it could a person being labeled and put on that floor when they actually don't need to be on that floor?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yeah, of course it's possible. Why? Because it's easy for a person to be misdiagnosed. It's very, very easy, because listen, it's not like a lot of diagnosis is not like hard science. You have to take a look at some of these inferential components that would give you an idea that it is a possibility that this is what's going on, but we never know. And so therefore we might start treating the person because of what we believe. Now, we have in our business, we have what we call a DSM 456. They have all these, and these are like the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder. They use that in social work, clinical social work, a lot. And so what they will say, listen, if a person has got a particular diagnosis, if we diagnose a person with, then what we're really doing is saying, listen, they have to have X amount of, they have to have,
having a,
what's that now? Can you hear me?
no, go ahead.
Okay, you have to have like 3 or 4 categories, under this syndrome. And it doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 out of 7 or 8, then they say, you got it. You got this thing. Now, just because, and somebody else may have 2 out of the 3 or 4 that you have, but they have something else, but they're still going to diagnose them with this particular syndrome. They're going to do that. And so it is not hard science. So sometimes the reason why I think the person, should be diagnosed this way is because from my cultural background, when I see people behaving this way, this is what I think is going on with them. Back to the story you told us to open this segment up. And so there are some cultural overlays that we need to be very careful about. And the person who's acting out the behavior may be from another culture, but because I'm from another culture, we're not from the same culture. I don't understand why they behave that way, but I then diagnose them based on my culture. Totally misdiagnosed. Totally. So we need to be careful. So the answer to that is yes, they can be misdiagnosed. And so what happens is now we prescribe the treatment based on the diagnosis.
Okay. Wow, wow, wow. Well, let me switch a little bit. Let me ask you this. What is the difference? Because, some people are diagnosed, and we're going to come to it, because even within the church, there are people who are scared to be diagnosed, that they have some, as the topic says, I'm not sick. They say they are not sick, but what is the difference between a person, and we have come across this before, a person being demon possessed and mentally ill?
Oh man. For a person who's demon possessed, okay, there is no diagnosis. There is no clinical diagnosis for a person who's demon possessed. They just got something and they start acting out. So you can't go and find what demon possession looks like. You can't see that, because now you're entering into the world of spiritualism now. And psychology don't deal with the world of spiritualism. Psychology deals with the understanding human behavior, but we must have certain criteria, objective criteria, I may say, but from which we can land on what we believe clinically is going on with this person, as demonstrated by their behavior. Now, demon possessed, we don't know what that is, but I'm sure going to tell you it is not a part of psychology. It is not. And so you just don't know how to treat it. You can't go to a clinic and say, listen, they may say they may be diagnosed with schizophrenia. The person, no, I ain't schizophrenic. I got demon possessions. I'm demon possessed. Well, it doesn't make sense for the clinician to argue with a person who said, listen, I'm demon possessed. Because if that's what they believe, okay, then there is nothing you can do to convince them that they might be schizophrenic. Because what is that? They don't know what that is. And so everything looks like it's schizophrenia, but for them, they're demon possessed. And they will probably walk out of your office because they will see schizophrenia as an affront to who they are. They might see it as a sickness. Whereas with demon possession, if they believe in the world of spiritualism, man, it's going to be hard. It's going to be real tough, if not impossible, to treat that person, to treat him.
And Dr. Francis, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because we have heard this sometimes in our church, where people need clinical help, but
Right.
we push it to the side and says, just like you said, if somebody is demon possessed, let's pray the demon out of them, when that is not actually the case. Somebody needs to actually sit down with a person like yourself and get some diagnosis. So that's what sometimes we see the fine line. And so how does the church deal with those individuals on that fine line?
Well, first off, when it comes to mental illness, they have to be, they need a clinical assessment for one. They need to be assessed. And there are a battery of tests that they will put people through, and they collate and they collaborate all of those, and then they come to what they think might be a reasonable, and sometimes they're really right on the money, a reasonable diagnosis. But the other part about it is there are just so many things that could create different kinds of behavior from the same person under it might be something they ate, it might be something they drank, it might be a whole number. They may just have lost a loved one, they may just have lost a job. There are all kinds of things that would probably make them respond to in a particular way that might allow a person to come down on the side of whatever the diagnosis is. But when you come to demon possession. Yes, the church has gone down that road for a long time, but I'm so happy to say I think now the world of Christianity, which is the world I know, okay, at a place now where they are recognizing the validity of mental illness and treat it as such. Just like diabetes or high blood pressure, when you have it, you don't say, well, you're demon possessed just because you may be acting normal, but something's going on your inside. And so therefore the church is at a place now where I think that they're coming to the conclusion that not everything that looks like demon possession is demon possession. And we should not just say we're going to pray the devil out of them, because we don't know that. So yeah, we should have the person tested. Absolutely tested.
Wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that, because how do you and what would be your recommendation if there is someone that you feel that is acting in a different way? I'm trying to use my word correctly, but in out of their norm, and you would see that this person needs some outside help. How would you go about getting that person that help?
Well, it's kind of funny, because unless the person is certified like they're a danger to themselves or to someone else or to society, okay, you cannot force them into accepting service. So you can't just say, I think you need to go and see a professional for help. They have to buy into this. And the way they buy into this is taking time to not understand what's going on with the person, but taking time to understand the person as the person is. You accept the fact that they are behaving in a particular way. You don't downplay it. You don't give it a negative spin. You accept the person. People just like to be accepted as they are. So you understand that I'm going through this. Yes, I understand you're going through this. And I'm not going to call it a name. I might ask them, well, how are you doing? How do you handle this? When did it start? I may ask them all these different kinds of questions, and so when the person comes to understand that I could be an ally, I could be somebody that could be a friend of theirs, they're more than likely to open up and give me the history. So now we go into the history of this, as opposed to taking what we see from specific behavior in the current time. So we need to have that. And so when we do that, then we can get a better picture of the other person. The person more than likely to be cooperative when we do that, as opposed to them, thinking that, well, the last time I admitted to this, 10 people told me I was crazy. People stopped talking to me. They walked on the other side of the street. They cursed me out. So when they get these kind of negative responses from people, it's hard for them to say, well, listen, I'm going to open up and tell people who I am. No, what we need to do is to take the time, if the situation will permit, because sometimes they might be a danger to themselves or a danger to others. But if those situations is not present, then you might just want to take some time and come to know the person, because there's always a reason why a person is acting the way they're acting, which may be, which is different from the social norm. And again, I want to say, are they from North America? You grew up in Jamaica, so you had this thing about how they saw people out there. Well, so we can't just project that onto people, because then what we're doing is we're using our culture to define another person's behavior in another culture.
So talk. I think you have touched a little bit on it. So talk to that family member who is dealing with someone who the behavior is not normal, and you see that this person may, you assuming or based on their behavior that they need to see a physician,
Okay.
and the individual, as you said before, is refusing to go to see the physician because the family is at his wits end. There's nothing more that the family thinks that they can do to help this individual. So how would you counsel that family member?
Well, I think it's one thing to counsel a family member. I think if there are multiple people in the family, you may have multiple ideas about what's really going on. You know, so if you have some of the family members who are saying, "Listen, we think something you need to go and see somebody right away," the person who's carrying the symptom bearer. The others are symptom sharers. Family members are symptom sharers. The one, the identified person, okay, the identified client, the identified patient, they're the symptom bearer. So if the family saying, "Listen, we think you need to go see somebody," it depends to the degree to which they are attached and to these people and will trust these people, the rest of the family members, because not all family members can be trusted or can be attached to.
Mhm.
Now, if they have one person on the family line, in the family conglomerate, in the family system, who is very powerful and influential, who can say, "No, I don't think he needs to go." What do you think he's going to do? He is going to reference that person and say, "Well, so and so, who's always right, don't think I should go." Now there is what we call intra-familial war going on over one person. And so we need to be very careful. But how do you do that? Well, first off, you got to kind of sit down and talk to the family to see what are their concerns. What are their concerns? What's normal? What's the abnormal? How do they know that it's abnormal? Is it just because of the behavior? Is it extreme? Why is it extreme? What's causing the behavior? Does the person drink? Does the person use drugs? Does the person do whatever it is that they do on a regular basis that you may or may not know about? And the reason they use whatever type of drug they use, okay, it's always, there's a, it's, you either deal with the pain or you deal with it, or you search for pleasure. And if they're searching for pleasure and the pleasure is good, then they're going to continue doing that. But then they're going to continue getting the result that makes them look like they are not acting normal. But they're not worried about that. They just want to feel good. And whatever this thing brings to them, that's what they want. Now, y'all can deal with my behavior afterward. I'm just in the business of looking for pleasure. And that's what they want. So for this person now, you need to be able to talk about what it is they are doing as an escape. What are they
Yeah.
using? What kind of pain are they in? Because you know how it is. You go to a hospital and they're gonna perform surgery. They give you anesthesia. Well, this person is in a lot of pain. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to find any kind of an emotional anesthesia that's going to work. That's why people smoke and drink. And so let me just say this here. And then we make the biggest excuse of calling them crackheads, drunks, and all these kind of things when they may have a dependency, but to label them only further pushes them further away from trusting that you have their best interest at heart. So the family, you need to talk with the family and see what have they tried. What are their major concerns? Who are the allies? What kind of a subgroups they have in the family? Who's the most influential that can help this person to accept the kind of intervention that is necessary, as opposed to everybody just coming down on this person, and some in a very harsh way, because that's just going to drive the person away, and it creates more pain. And what they do, they just do more of what they do and take more of what they take to produce more of what they do.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow. Wow. We want to thank Dr. Francis for being with us. For those of you who are listening, this is the first Thursday a broadcast with the Bible Patrol. And today we are talking about I am not sick. And you may say, what is that? There are people who are walking around, they are going through the suffering. And this is a big thing now. People are coming out of the closet, as they would say now, dealing with the mental sickness, mental health. And so it is affecting us within our family, it's affecting us within the church. And sometimes we do not want to deal with it. Sometimes we deal with it and we says that this individual is demon possessed, and we says that let's just pray about it and it will go away. But as we are learning, and there is a difference. You cannot diagnose a demon possessed, as Dr. Francis says. There is nothing out there that we can do other than we know that the Bible says that we can pray and demons can flee. But in terms of clinical, there is nothing that we can do from that perspective. And so we are talking to those individuals who are saying that I'm not sick, but they need to see. I saw one of my friends today was posting on Facebook, and he was saying how he went to the doctor and he was getting a check, for mental and everything, and making sure that everything is all right. But Dr. Francis, I want to ask the question: how do you deal with, say, for example, you may take a family member out of their wish and take them to the doctor, but now they may resent you for doing that. How do you deal with that situation?
well, I think when you do that, in our business we call that coercive intervention or coercive therapy or coercive. And in other words, you are forcing a person to do something against their will. And if they don't do it, there are certain types of outcomes, aversive outcomes that they don't want to have to. In other words, if a judge might say, listen, if you keep on giving me dirty drug screens, I'm going to lock you up. So the person might stop drinking just because they don't want to go to prison. But they find other things to help them feel the way they want to feel. So you don't want to force the person. You never want to force the person, because when you do, you are narrowing their their comfort group, the group that they rely on, the group that they can express themselves to. You never want to do that. So let me just say here also that a part of the reason why some of us may treat other people the way we treat them, it is not because of who they are. It might be because that person, triggers something in us. And the way which we have not dealt with, by the way, we're going through that stuff. When we see them, it triggers my unresolved issue or situation in me. And so the best thing to do is to put them away. So let me put it another way. Back in the days, in the Bible days, they isolated people who had leprosy because nobody wanted to catch it. Well, it's not like that today. But if I know that Pastor Mark Hyde got something going on, that when I see you, it triggers something in me that I don't like about me, I don't want to come close to you because you're going to remind me of who I am. And so we got to be very careful why we try to force people to do things possibly against their will. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that intervention is not necessary, but forced intervention, can only prolong what it is they're going through. And it will break their confidence in humanity. And they just become more steeped in what they're doing and go and find a culture which support whatever it is that they're doing. And they get to the point where it could become life-threatening. So I think they really need to be very careful how we do that. And again, the church need to understand this, because some fire and brimstone preachers, what they do is they're going to preach the devil out of you. No, you're going to preach somebody out the church, and when you preach them out the church, you lose all opportunity to bring them to Christ, so that they can hear what you have to say. They go and they find their support group. When they go to their support group, church is not on the list of their support group. Why? Because they call us hypocrites. So we got to be very, very careful, both the church as a larger family, the community as a larger family, and the individual biopsychosocial family that people are raised in or they live in. All right. We need to understand, what is it about people, why they do what they do, not why. Why questions are what researchers ask. Why is this? Why is it raining? Why is the sun hot? Why? But when you ask a question, what is it about a person? The answer cannot come from the outside. Even when I ask myself, what is it about me? Why I see Pastor Mark Hyde the way I see Pastor Mark Hyde, it may have nothing to do with Pastor Mark Hyde. It may have everything to do with the way I see myself. And because I see myself this way, I look at you through my optics, and that's what I see. We got to be very careful.
Wow. This is heavy. This is heavy. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Francis this afternoon. We are talking on the topic, I am not sick. And this is for individuals who are going through to mental illness, and they are not recognizing that they need help. And so, Dr. Francis, I needed to touch on that. How long, you can, from the outside, sometimes we don't recognize our own self. Someone from the outside has to recognize that something is going on with us. How do you deal, or how should the individual deal that is in denial? Let me put it that way. That is in denial. Well, they are not sick.
Well, sometimes it's been going on for so long that they normify it. It becomes a part of their norm, and they function really well within that. Really, really well. That's why that's why you find some people who are homeless. They're not homeless because they can't find a home. They are homeless because for them, that is their normal culture. And so when you find people who are saying, listen, I am not sick. First of all, in order for them to get the kind of help they need, they're going to have to accept that something is not right with them, and that external intervention is necessary. If you can't get them to that place, you can forget about it. So it's important. Then again, I'm going to say this. It is important to take time. If they're not a danger to the self, immediate danger to the self or to others, it is important to take time to come to know the person. And I'm going to make a distinction here. We do not know people. We do not know the amness. Moses, asked, who am I? The amness is not your behavior. What we do, Pastor, we judge people. We make statements about people based on what they do, when they do, where they do, how they do. What is a behavior? When is time? Where is a place? How is method? We look at the human behavior, and through our own biased eyes, we say something is not right with this people. Now, you might be right. But how do you convey this to this person? And yeah, there are people who definitely need to have mental health intervention, but they won't go because of a number of reasons. And everybody can have any kind of number of reasons. But if we talk to these people, it may take a month, it might take 2 months, because they're not going to tell you, because trust now becomes a factor. Trust is a factor. And if they can't trust you, it's because they don't feel safe with you. Trust don't just happen by itself. The reason a dog will bark at me, it's not because first of all that the dog don't trust me. It's because the dog don't feel safe, because the dog don't know me. So because the dog don't feel safe, the dog is going to bark, and hopefully that will repel me. But if you stand your ground and move towards the dog will start to scamper, run away. Then you discover they are not trying to bite me. They're trying to protect themselves. And so safety now becomes an issue. So a lot of these people, they don't feel safe expressing themselves, disrobing themselves, because the last time it happened, people laughed at them. People laughed at them. In the Bible, they said about who is this fella walking around talking about he can do miracles, he's gonna lay his life down and pick it up again in 3 days. Is this not the carpenter's son? See what that? They just labeled him. A carpenter's son can't talk like that. You understand what I'm saying? He's just a carpenter's son. All he knows is to get a saw, hammer, and wooden nail. That's it. And so we got to be careful. But those who took time to know who Jesus was were taking their babies to them. They were taking their children to them. They were taking all kinds of sick to them. The lame, the deaf, the dumb, the blind, Why? Because they took time to understand the work that Jesus is doing. We need to take time to understand what these people are going through and not project our inane mindset on these people. Because we just alienate them.
Yeah. Dr. Francis, in all your years of working, and I know you continue to stress this, point about in terms of forcing. Have you ever seen where someone has been forced or put out of their will and taken for treatment, and when they get to treatment, they discover that something was wrong?
Yes, sometimes it will happen, and they knew that all along. They were just resistant. They knew that all along, okay? Because some of these people are really intelligent people. They're not dummies, but they knew this all along. But there was something inside of them that was saying, if I go into treatment, okay, I'm telling the whole world that something is wrong with me. As opposed to see, listen, if you think people is seeing that something is wrong with you, the person, as opposed to you have some behavior that needs attention, that's a whole different thing there right there now. If they can internalize the whole thing, people can see my behavior and they will treat my behavior, but they might dislike my behavior, but they might love me, the person. And when we can make that kind of a distinction, they can get it. So yeah, I've seen where people have gone in and say, man, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And the reason they didn't go was because grandma didn't go. Grandpa had his potion that he made out in the woods, and everybody's got their own little thing that they use. And they say, no, my grandma didn't do this. Grandma, can you give me some of that stuff you had? Grandma's, and grandma can hardly make it, not just because she's old, but because she is just rotting herself away. And, that they live out in the country, they hardly have any, their socialization is different. And getting to treatment is different. Getting to treatment is different, and treatment going to them is almost negligible. It doesn't happen. So they suffer. And so now they have to find a way to make sense out of who they are so that they can do what they do. You understand what I'm saying here?
Yes.
It's that people are not trying to make sense out of what they do. They want to make sense out of, who am I? Who is this person? That is the crux of the matter with people. And so, yeah, there are some people who will go in and they say, yeah, this is the best thing. I've heard people say that so many times, but they're not as deeply resistant as other people, who are saying, no, I ain't going to do this. I'm not going to do this,
Wow. Man, and Dr. Francis, we're going to have to try to do part 2. We're going to have to try to do part 2 because it's so much here in mental health. And as you look across the TV and look across even within the church, there are several people or several individuals who are suffering, but they would not admit and go and get the treatment because of what? you says the labor
Labor.
is the key, and so what would you what I needed to talk to the church. I needed to talk to the church, and say to the church, what can we do for these individuals who are scared, to even admit that they're sick? What can
Okay.
the church do?
Okay. Before I can get that, kind of slide into that. Sometimes we have, a pastor who's just wound up, man, just wound up, wide open, preaching, and just wound right up. Okay. And they got a family of people or a group of people who they don't shout, they don't holler, they don't wave their hands, they just sit there. People think that something is wrong with them because you're supposed to holler and carry on. Why? Because the pastor set the tone, and this is the way we do it here. And they said, well, people, so such and such, they just sit here like, are they even here? Are they even listening? Culturally, they're not similar to that. You understand what I'm saying here? And so
Yes.
the church, I would suggest, I can't tell the church what to do. I would suggest that we take people as they are. I'm going to tell you, Mark, there's one thing that we have to do, man. There's one thing that we've got to do is this. If we don't take time to know the who of the person based on the what, when, where, why, and how of the person, we will be totally off left field just by watching them, because a person may behave amazingly normal today, and tomorrow, after they've had some drink and they've smoked a few joints and they've had some of this or some reaction from medication, or they've had some bad news or whatever it is, they just act totally different. Totally
Mm.
different. So I think we really need to let the church. I think the church needs to take the posture of, and here it is: individual intervention.
Mm.
Individual intervention. Don't treat everybody that comes from New York as New Yorkers. Hey, you know how New Yorkers are. And don't treat everybody that comes from LA as how people in LA. Don't treat everybody that comes from Jamaica as it. Don't treat every African as this or African. No, 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 no. You need to take time. It's the Jesus thing. He had all these disciples, and he took time to know every disciple, everything that he knew. And that's when he knew what he could do with it and what these disciples were capable of doing. Have I been so long with you and you're asking me show you the Father? Me and the Father are one. So we really need to take, and it's hard sometimes, Pastor, because when you got 500-600 people in a church, it's hard for you to take the time to get to know one person. But when you have 100 people or 200 people in the church, it is so much easier, and the integration and feeling that you are at one with this church as opposed to be a number in this large megalopoli of a church.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. So I think every church, the culture of every church, and every church got its own culture. I don't mean the culture from large culture. I mean the culture that is framed within those four walls. Every church got a culture. This is a singing church. This is a praying church. This is a shouting church. This is a whatever church. You decide what kind of church you want to go. Some people will ask, well, how what kind of church is it? Oh, well, they do this, they do that over there. I don't do that. I want a more. And some, hey, man, I've been looking for a church like that for a long time. Different people. And so it's important that we take the time to get to know the who of the person. And here is how you get to it. Yeah, let me tell you how you get to know the who of a person. The who of a person is how the person experienced themselves. You know what I just said? Is how they experience themselves. And you cannot tell a person about an experience the way you experience the experience. So we cannot take, because all you're doing, listen, Mark, I'm going to tell you this. Whatever's going on between you and me here now, Pastor, whatever's going on, right? Tomorrow, whatever you tell people, however you tell people, about what happened here today. You cannot tell them the experience that you're having right now. It's just impossible. You're going to tell them your
Yeah.
experience. You're going to tell them your experience that you're having tomorrow of the experience you had today. You understand what I'm saying? And so it is so
Yes.
important then for us to try to find out what is the experience of this person here. We need to find ways to engage the person, not the behavior, the person.
Yeah.
It is a cheap way. It is a cheap way to say you know somebody just because you watch how they behave, how they dress, how they do all these. That's a cheap way.
Mm. Well, you have to get to know the who.
You got to get to know them. So when Jesus was walking down the street and he stood under a tree, he said, Zacchaeus, I know you. Come on down.
Yes.
Because today, see, Jesus took time to know Zacchaeus. You understand what I'm saying here? He took time.
Yes.
Jesus took time to allow Mary to wash him. Everybody else was looking at this prostitute, this woman's behavior. Jesus was looking at the who of her. You understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah, the who. Yes.
The who. And that is so important. And you can't see the who. You must spend time to experience the who.
To get the wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. That's a mouthful for me right there. That's a mouthful. And so, Dr. Francis, I know we started a little bit late because of technology, but we normally cut off around this time. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming, because this is a topic that I'm trying to grasp myself, and so I want to know the best that I can know as a leader, and how to deal with individuals that I come, because sometimes the people are acting a certain way, and you as a leader, I'm not trained in the area that you are trained in. You have the schooling and everything to go with it. And so I rely on individuals like yourself who can give me a little bit of wisdom of how to deal with it. And today, I know I'm not the only one, but there are individuals who are out there who are listening. I want to thank you for joining us today on the first Thursday. The first Thursday of each month with a Bible Patrolman is here, and I bring on different guests and how they can share their testimony or share, like today, on a given topic that is pressing. Hopefully, and probably in the future, we can bring on someone who has been gone through with this illness and have admitted that they needed help, and they went and got the help that they needed. Probably we can have someone to share that testimony sometime down the road. So again, Dr. Francis, I want to thank you. But before you go, I want you just talk to the church. I want you to talk to that individual now who is saying that I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I needed to talk to that individual right now before you go.
Well, again, I'm going to tell you this, your belief can kill you or your belief can cure you. And they are, if a person is saying they are not sick, to try to convince a person otherwise, may be a failure, on your part. You cannot deal with something, inside of yourself unless you can accept the fact that it is. So now for me, it's about talking to the person and bringing them to the acceptance of what's going on. But the acceptance of what it is does not recreate a negative picture of who they are. The thing about acceptance, though, you don't have to believe or agree with everything you accept. Now that might sound like a contrary. In other words, you listen, you cannot not accept something. If you recognize it, if it comes into your consciousness, you've already accepted the fact that it exists. Now, whether or not you like it, that's a whole different person. Ball of wax. Okay, so the person then who is saying, I'm not sick. Again, please don't try to tell the person they are sick. What we do is we try to talk to the person to see who are they, how did they get to where they got to? And we must show total acceptance, not of their behavior, but of who they are. And when they do that, they will create an alliance, more than likely to create an alliance with you. And when they create an alliance with you, when they have an ally, then you can begin to do what? Share your life story.
Yeah.
When you share your life story, you're beginning to become at one with them. And I'm not talking about how you made $1 million. I want to share your life story, how you used to pick up cans and bottles on the street. You know, you share your life story so that they can see that there is hope and that there is the capacity to make some positive changes in their lives. But we, you know, it is a dangerous thing to try to prove to a person that they're sick when there is no clinical evidence. When there is no clinical evidence.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Francis, for shedding that light on there, because so often we want to label people and tell them that they're sick. You know, we want to tell them that. And so I thank you for the insight, and I've gleaned a lot from what you have said this afternoon. And we will definitely be staying in touch with you again. Thank you. Give my love to your family, and tell your lovely wife that I said hello this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you again. Again, thank you, listening audience. This is the Bible Patrolman with the First Thursday broadcast. And I pray that this broadcast has been a blessing to you this afternoon. If you like it, you can share it with individuals so that they can get a wealth of knowledge from Dr. Francis. Until next month, may God bless you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Francis.
Been my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.